Hello and welcome to my 13th Diary Room podcast. Today's guest is Martin O'Shea. Martin's the founder and CEO of Bold Management, a talent management company that's been the driving force behind successful stories of TV personalities, influencers, singer-songwriters and sports stars, with over 3 decades of industry experience. Well, Martin, welcome to our home bar here. It's good to see you. I've known you for 20 odd years around Liverpool. We've crossed paths in different areas. But tell me a little bit more about your management company, what you do.
So, yeah, we've been representing people and projects. Well, I've been doing it for 30 plus years now. Mm-hmm. Most of the time with successes within the things we've chosen to do or the people who we've worked with. Broken quite a lot of records along the way, whether it was biggest selling boxing film with Ricky Hatton for his life story, and then number ones across all formats really. Yeah. And then more recently we started getting more heavily into the concepts of some of the shows that we wanted to do with clients. So whether that was with Amir Khan or Lawrence Kenwright for the Shankly Hotel or stuff like that, where we identify a good story really, I suppose. Yeah. And then started working with boxers in 2016, 17, and that's developed into us. Well, Amir Khan's a client, and Paul Smith and I founded the Global Fighters Union together in September 23, which is soft launched in January this year. With former GMB leader at the helm and some really outstanding people running it. So the goal is to change the game in combat sports.
Brilliant. Okay, so our conversation today has kind of come off the cuff a little bit, really, hasn't it? Because we've just had a guest in, Big Joe Egan, which is, former sparring partner to Mike Tyson. And when we announced last week that we were here and Darlene said about your management side, you might be able to help him with different things, it was kind of great. Well, let's get them together here and see if we can do much about it. Let's take it back 30 years ago now then, when you first started in this industry, 3 decades ago. Yeah. How did it start off and what type of people were you looking after?
I suppose there's such a huge difference between now and then, mainly because there was no internet or social media and no mentors, no venues, really. When I say no venues, I mean, compared to what Liverpool's like now, then it was totally different.
It was tough.
It was tough staying in Liverpool, to be honest. It was a 3.5 hour train ride if it ever got there. Yeah. And it was easier for most people to leave than to stay, but myself and a few others were never going to leave, mainly because the kids were here and all that stuff. Yeah. But that was the landscape then of how do you get your break. It's tenacity, like always. You've got to stick at it, even when things don't go right, which often they don't, as you know. So, well, it's just always a challenge, isn't it? So it's always having that goal that you recognise that you're going to get there. Yeah. It's just how long is it going to take. Okay. So early to mid 20s was tour managing, travelling the world with lots of high profile artists, where I was learning.
Can you name a few?
Well, just people like Snap, you remember them, the dance band, and Rosie Gaines, who was part of Prince's band, and just loads of dance acts really through 3 Beat and through Rob, friends of ours really, who were having hits with these artists. And then I started working with agencies and looking after some of their artists on the road, and it was just always cyclical, where you'd go out and do a couple of months touring, but if you had a big hit, then it would be, must have been to Japan 5 or 6 times. And,
oh, really? Yeah,
just generally, wherever the record was being a hit, you would go. Yeah. But I kind of loved that aspect of it, but you were hired help in that way, of like, your job was to get them on stage, not to tell them how to do how they could have another hit following on that one. So I just watched them come and go, really think, they've got a great voice, they've stumbled onto a hit record and they're not going to follow it up, which a lot of them didn't.
Okay, and is that down to their fault or missing their opportunity, or how does it not carry on forward with? You've had a good hit and you have got the voice and you can deliver.
I think you've got to always have a plan with goals. I mean, it sounds simple enough now because there's so many self-help or life coach or podcast access to advice, if you like, but taking to say, what do I want to be doing this time next year and how do I get there? Have you got all the skills you need to do it? Well, if your answer to that yes, then how are you going to get there? And then actually sitting and planning it out, saying, I'm going to do this. And if it involves knocking on 500 doors or whatever it is, to let people know that I am capable, then I'm going to do it. Okay. And I think that's, in the case of a band that's suddenly having a hit, if they haven't got a plan beforehand. It's like some of the sports people who you meet, who you think they've set a goal that's here when they're capable of that. But either for the coaching or whatever's in their head is, once you hit a goal, it's like, where'd you go from there?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So always having these constant resets of...
Do your team work with individuals like that, whether they're pop stars or sports personalities? They have their target set, they get to that. Is your job then to try and nurture a structure around to take them beyond that?
Sitting and planning out. So Charlotte's probably a good idea. My sister Kate looked after Charlotte at Bold for Charlotte Crosby, who started, and Geordie Shaw. And we walked into a room where the whole cast were there. We were going to manage the whole cast.
Right.
Nobody knew this show. So from our point of view, it was a bit of a poison chalice potentially, but we'd been asked to do it by the channel and by the producers, and we were like, well, we'll do it, you know. And the first person that Kate managed, if you like, through Bold, even though she was running the company, but it was Charlotte, and that was it clicked, and that's been a journey of such discovery with somebody who always knew what they wanted, had very very strong vision for it, very bright, you know, and also people love her. So going through the kind of just pre-Instagram, just as Instagram was launching, and she just grasped that and knew exactly what to do with it, and has constantly reinvented herself. So if you look at an example of where are we going to be in 2 years' time, well, we would like to be on the BBC rather than on MTV. People going, you're never going to get that show on the BBC, but people grow up. Other people come into channels and change the viewpoint of what that channel's about. So that happened a few times, and she's a great example of somebody, 13 or 14 years later, who's continuing to have a lot of success. Still got
longevity in the industry.
We managed this young 17-year-old musician. He's 21 now, and he's on 40 odd million followers online. Wow. And he started.
So is it completely, you just touched on it twice then about social media, you know, if you take it back to let's say end of the 90s when you were working with Atomic Kitten, weren't you? You know, there was no social media around then. So do you think it was easier for them in them days to compare to someone, a band or an artist now?
I think that it just is always the same equation of it's either a great song or it's not. You know, I think you can grow an audience through being brilliant on stage and having that relationship with your audience in ways that you couldn't then.
Yeah.
You know, without the backing of remote marketing, if you like.
Yes,
like you weren't
from the publishers or the record labels.
So you can go now where, and this is the thing with the magicians, say, compared to songwriters. So you can have a hit, like we had our first drum and bass global number one on Spotify just before Christmas. And that was a track that came out of nowhere, out of the blue, and just flew in the space of about 8 weeks. Well, that wouldn't have happened then. Would have been impossible because, well, not just because CDs or physical formats,
getting airplay on the radio stations, it would have never touched what.
Whereas now you can. The litmus test is the public are very rarely wrong. They're very fickle and they don't suffer fools and they move on fast. And they don't care ultimately.
Yeah, they're brutal.
You know, they're brutal. They are absolutely, and that's just how it is. So once you realise that and you can move at the pace that social media and you know, digital demands. Then it's exciting because the public will absolutely go, that's good. And overnight, you know, we had one guy who put a TikTok video up about the English language and had 1 million views overnight. Wow. Just because it's just went. And he had no
track record of putting anything else up like that?
No. And it just exploded. People.
And is that down to fluke or is that down to he captured a gap or something that was required?
He captured a moment that nobody had done. And people started sharing it very quickly and it just blew. The magician was the same in lockdown. He was 17.
What's his name, the magician?
His name's Dan Rhodes.
Dan Rhodes, okay.
Yeah, stuff he's done is... That was an example of us going, right, we know what he wants to do. Yeah. But it's in a world that we're not... I've never managed a magician before, but always loved Dynamo, for example. So we got the same...
He's a character Dynamo, isn't he?
Yeah.
I met him once. I'd seen a little bit about him. This was when I had a show commissioned of mine called Celebrity DIY, where I was going to celebs' houses doing all these shows, and it was a format idea I come up with off the back of going to celebs' houses, and every time I got there, they were like, Craig, have you got your tools? Put this shelf up, can you fix that? I was thinking, there's mileage in this, I've got to sell. And I ended up doing it. And on the launch of it with the channel, the home channel, it was the first time I met Dynamo. And basically, I remember seeing this real kind of small guy, kind of looking a bit like, but very frail, I remember him looking like. And we're all bouncing around, getting excited, doing our demos on stage and things. And you had all the industry leaders and things all there watching. And he comes over to me and someone introduced him to me. And he was saying, I've got my new magic show, it's coming out, you know, can I do a little bit of magic on you? And I was like, yeah, sure, you know. And he went, have you got a phone? And I happened to have an iPhone at the time, and he took it. He gets a bottle, and he was like this. And there was weighted walk past, he took this bottle, and he'd emptied a bit of the dregs out the bottom. And he went like this, and he just, all of a sudden, so fast, he just kind of went, and he kind of went, blew in it. I don't know if that was to take my mind off it, but he'd done it. And then all of a sudden, my phone was inside this bottle, like this, and I was just like, what the? I was blown away, and I was like, go in. So I looked, and it was like, and he went, what's your number? So he takes his phone out, so I give him my number, he rings, my phone's rattling inside this bottle. So I'm thinking, he's just hand speed, he's put it up his sleeve, that's not my phone in there. And it's rattling away, so I was a bit like, how do I get my phone out of it? So I was like, that was brilliant, but you know, how do I get? And he laughed at me, and he walked away.
And that's what he does.
And I'm like this with this bottle. My mind is blown. I had to go outside on the curb and gently try to break the bottle like this to get my phone out of it. And I knew straight away he's going to explode, literally.
And he did. And he was incredible. Didn't he? Yeah. And so Dan was watching Dynamo, but Dano's always had that focus of like knowing if I'm going to be good at something, then I've got to put the hours in, and I've got to do it and do it and do it, which is what magicians do. So that and the dedication that level of time. Is they call it the 10,000 hours rule, don't they? You know, the Beatles did it, or Steve Jobs did it. You know, these guys by hook or by crook suddenly had to put that time in to become as good as they became. You know,
to become
and so
professionals at what they're doing.
Yeah, and he was like, I know I've put my time in. I know I've put my time in, and all of our team have. So what are we going to do together? Well, okay, what's the goals? And it comes back to goals. So you want a book, which was, you know, the biggest book deal for New Writer of the Year, you know. Because,
brilliant, yes.
But again, he's got all these millions of followers, and the book company are expecting the kids to just go and buy the book.
Yes,
And it doesn't always work that way. You know?
I was going to say, is that a bit misillusional sometimes, because they can strike these deals because they've got millions of followers and you get a good interaction on social media, but does that always relate to guaranteeing sales can be high because of their following? No, and that's the smoke and mirrors bit of it. You know, you can know, unless you've got the research that tells you that you're right, in which case you can't always rely on research, but most of the time, if they had done that research, I would have said to them, well, who's going to buy the book? It's going to be the grandparents or the parents of his audience, because they're all under 18, right? So we can't expect, and even when they start saying, well, he's got like 30 odd million followers at the time, surely like 5% of them are going to buy it. And they start believing it themselves, and you're like, it doesn't make any difference. First of all, YouTube subscribers or people who watch TikTok, they're going to follow somebody, but they're not. It's not a devotion thing. Necessarily invest into something that they're selling.
Exactly, and we found it with when something kicks and you've got a hit, then everybody wants it, you know. And if you're not ready for that, you're gonna fail. You can miss the boat. You can have that little 1 minute wonder, and that candle soon fades down. Okay, so in my view, you've got kind of like artists that are coming up, and they've got kind of three directions of becoming, let's say, successful. One is on their own from social media, get that gathering. Two is with the right management who can structure their journey and take them down a pathway. And then you've got the other area of like the reality Simon Cowell's type of platform, where they can keep them under wraps for so long, give them the mass exposure on the primetime TV. But the moment that they don't get up to that, they drop off at the other end, they're ready for the next year. They have that moment. Do you think there's much of a crossover between all three of them? Or can they work hand in hand, or one going against the other? Well, we've got a client called Megan McKenna, right? And Megan has been with us for coming on for 10 years. She's had 3 country music number ones and a couple of iTunes number ones. She's done Glastonbury twice, all of the festivals, 70 odd arena shows, because she always wanted to be an artist and a singer, and that's what she was destined to do. But to get there, it was TV route, because it was standing from how do you get that audience quickly in a real tough part of the business. Well, the route for Megan was to go and do TV or radio, and then cross over. But when she did X Factor, Celebrity X Factor, Simon was saying to us and her, well, she said, I'm only going to do it if they really desperately wanted her. because she was famous, right? So she, you know, she was on Towie and all that. So what I'm only going to do if I could do my own songs, which was like, well, what are you going to do that for? Because you're not going to win if you do that. And she was like, well, I think I will, because the songs are good, and you know, we'll see what happens.
She believed in herself.
She won by a mile, but it still didn't really. Although it was the pandemic hit in at that point, but the fact was that the TV side of music doesn't work anymore. So they're not a record company; they're a TV company.
Yeah,
and they stopped being
entertainment. Not worried about record
So
sales.
if you look at, say, how many Britain's Got Talent, X Factors, and pop stars shows, and American Talent, you know, all those shows. If you look at the total number of people who were super famous from it for a window, how many of them have had recording careers? How many of them just dropped away? I mean, the percentage.
Your odd ones like Leona Lewis,
Ollie Mayers, maybe, you know, these guys. Not many though.
Very few then, under half a dozen. And there's probably been, if you stack it up over a 20-year period, there probably could have been 100 different talent shows over the 20-year period.
And look at the one that the BBC, The Voice. Don't think they've ever had anybody break through from that.
Really?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if they have, I mean, I've missed it, but maybe the version of it, but The Voice itself, which is finding all this talent, but it's talent that is not prepared for it, doesn't have a plan for it, is doing it for fun. The public buy in for half an hour and then it's like, let's go out. You know, it's not the same thing as planning, always having that desire to have a career.
So there's no longevity in it, is there? So what type of advice would you give a young teenager, let's say, who has got talent, whether they're acting, singing or a sports personality? They're leaving school, you know, they know they're good, their families know they're good. Would you say that would be wise to get the correct management to structure it more long term for longevity, or jump onto the reality TV show, get the big noticeability, let's say, and then it kind of drops back down?
I think it's just it's as simple as saying, what do you want to do first of all, and who's in that space that you respect, who's either done it and got the t-shirt on it and has been successful, or you're looking at what they're doing on their socials and going, I can do that. But it all comes back to then that point, you've got to put the time in.
The time.
Simple as that. You know, you've got to.
And do you think it's equally as important putting that time in to build up this social media presence?
I think it becomes more and more important. But if you're brilliant and you'll break through. I mean, nobody knew who Dan was, and then because he'd spent so much time practicing what he was doing with his tricks, when he actually went onto TikTok, started doing 6 or 7 clips a day of it, and he had this style. He had a very unique, very eccentric sort of young kid style, and it just clicked. But it wouldn't have clicked if he hadn't put the time in. You know, it was like, I want to be. I've seen Dynamo and I've spent a bit of time with him, which he had. You know, and I know that no matter what, I'm going to go for that.
Yeah.
He couldn't have done it if he hadn't put the 1,000 hours in, or however many hours it was at that point.
Yeah.
I think in our business of music, TV, entertainment, and the boxers that I work with, look at the amount of effort that goes into what they do. You know, and it is dedication of, if you haven't got it. I remember doing a show called Pushy Parents for Channel 4 or Channel 5 back years ago, and the girl they brought out was just so obvious she just didn't want to be a singer, but her mother was determined she would be. And it was a perfect example of, you can't shoe on something. You either want to do it, because then you get out of bed wanting to fly at it every day. You know, and if you do that
mindset of enjoying what you're doing, passion to put the hours in.
There's a guy called John Haynes.
It's not much of an effort then, is it? It doesn't seem like
it's effortless, because you just you see the improvements in every day and what you're doing. You see those little victories that you think, I'm winning here, I'm getting better, and I've got a shot at this, because other people are starting to notice what I'm doing. And you know what, you could do this. And your friends and family don't lie either. They might say, isn't that brilliant? But straight away you can tell you're lying. You're just saying that to make me feel good.
Through it,
But there's that aspect of it. People can't really lie. They lie, but they won't. You can tell. You know, you can see through it. Especially if something's either good or bad, or good or okay. Okay is not going to cut it.
No. My first experience with agencies, as you know, I won that first Big Brother 24 years ago. To come out, literally within days, I had to drop the agent that was assigned for us by Channel 4 because he was useless, sort of thing. And then once the kind of word went around that I was a kind of, let's say, a free agent, everyone wanted a piece of it, you know. I had Max Clifford calling, saying, I'm flying over from America, don't sign with anyone. I'm the only one who can make you a millionaire. And all these agents were promising me the world, you know, and it was a terrifying moment for me, because I knew nothing about the industry. I was so naive. And it was Davina McCall said, Craig, go and see my agent at the time. It was John Knoll Management, who probably come across him, haven't you? He's an old northern guy. Went to see him, and he was the first person who sat down, and he was kind of like, what do you want out of it?
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, do you know what? I don't actually know. I'm a builder's background, and I'm good at what I do. But in the TV world, I've never done anything besides being a reality TV program. And then I remember his words saying to me, so what do you want to do? Do you want to make a quick buck out of it now? Like what Max Clifford and everyone is saying, 3-6 months you'll be a millionaire, but it won't be longevity to it. You know, and he said, if you want the longevity, you want to see it out, let's take it slower. Drop you in on smaller shows and just started ticking that way. Yeah. And I did what he advised me to do, and literally, you know, we signed up by, I think January, signed up for a first 1 year deal with BBC. That went on to a 4-year exclusive deal, and then started working with all the other channels. And I kind of forged my way then into this. He's a builder, he can do a bit of presenting, and he can do them both together, so it works, you know.
And you've set the goal, and haven't you? You've started to think longer term, and that's what it's about, you know.
Yeah.
I think there was one of our clients, a guy called Anton Daniluk, who was on Love Island. We didn't really normally bother with that sort of show for a whole load of reasons, usually because it was such short term, you know. But with Anton, he had about 3,000 followers. He wanted to do fitness for kids and fitness generally. He wanted to do it, you know. He had all these really motivated. So the lad in the office was like, I think he's got it, you know, and we could just put him forward for some shows, see what happens. And he got into Love Island, and I remember sitting with his mum and dad when he was in the show.
So did you put him forward for Love Island, or did you do himself? Or
that's what we'll do occasionally. I've got one at the moment with a Scouse girl who's brilliant, and we think that she'll end up being a star. And so if you meet somebody like that, you go, they're dedicated to it. It's what they want to do. They're strong enough to deal with it, which is you were. Yeah. There's lots who aren't. And I understand why. Because suddenly,
it can be a tough
well, you're walking down the street and everyone's staring at you. What's that like? I don't know what that's like. But I'm next to people all the time.
When I first come out, I had to have security with me. And I was kind of thinking, why do I need security? Because everyone was coming over wanting a piece of you.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's the mad thing. Like with the magician walking through an airport, the kids will flock around him. The parents haven't got a clue who he is, and they don't care either. Well, why would they? Because they don't know him. So you're getting the hardcore, like reality TV people who are like, oh, they can't believe you're real, you know. So it's mad. So Anton went in with like 3,000 followers and came out with 1.4 million. Couldn't walk down the street and all that. So you like, that's dropping in. You know, you're in a bubble, which you were, and you come out, and you either sink or swim.
Damn to it, or you don't. Yeah, terrifying. I often think I was a very late starter when it comes to social media. You know, it's only really been the last 4 or 5 years we've been taking it serious because of what we're doing with the video productions. But before that, and I often think to myself, when I first come out of Big Brother, that last night I got 3.7 million people spent 25p to vote for me. So I'd have come out with probably 5 million. If social media was born and around then, but it wasn't. And I often think, where would it be now if I come out to that and then carried on working it and built it as the years went by? But it is what it is, isn't it? So what's new for you now? You've got this boxing
we've got
association now, haven't you? What about that?
So there was one of my mentors when I had was a guy called Keith Blackhurst who had Deconstruction Records back in the day. So Keith did like M People and Kylie and all. Most of the biggest dance records of the mid to late 90s were on Deconstruction, and he ran RCA and brilliant operator. And when he left RCA, he set up with a Canadian guy a thing called Official Community, and what it was looking after the most loyal fans. So in ways where a fan club probably used to back in the day, but a fan club had sort of become a dirty word, if you like, where the most loyal fans often didn't get the attention that their loyalty deserved. And that was the start of what we looked at with boxers, starting with David Price actually, where the fact they're having to look after their own ticketing at the start, like go and give people tickets and fight about a guest list an hour before they're fighting. It's just madness. It doesn't happen in music.
You should just be focused on the business in hand.
So I spotted that and we started putting that framework together to bring a sort of reality of what is possible with digital into a world that was close to it, like the boxing was. So it's gone really well so far. Our first main fight was the Liam Smith, Chris Eubank one last year, and it just proved that the pilot works. But it's gone on from there. And when I did the what's it called, overlap with Gary Neville and Amir Khan. So I was with Amir. And Gary was asking him about the Kell Brook fight. I don't know whether you follow the fight game or what, but that fight, Amir was in his dressing room for like 35, 40 minutes. There was an argument. The audience didn't know what it was. I represent him for his TV and commercial stuff, but not for anything else, no boxing or nothing like that. So I didn't really know either, because I hadn't really seen that much of him. Anyway, so they're talking, and when Gary says to him, so what happened with the Kell Brook thing? And Amir said, well, he was wearing illegal gloves. So he was wearing horsehair gloves, which will cut you in the first 2 or 3 rounds. And Amir said, I'm not fighting him in if he's wearing horsehair gloves. I'll wear horsehair gloves.
Disadvantage,
but nobody knew. So you've got a 2-weight world champion, Olympian, in his dressing room with the border control coming in saying, if you don't get out there and fight now, then the fight's off and you're getting £1 million fine plus, right? This is a guy who's already got a tough night ahead of him, right? And he's wearing horsehair gloves. I know he is. So get the other pair in here and we'll have a look at them.
The authorities need to check it, straight away.
Brought them in, they slit them open, the horsehair gloves. So, but that 35, 40 minutes threw him out, right, in my opinion anyway. Because I was saying, what's going on? But nobody knew that had happened. So anyway, I said to Gary, never look, can I use that bit just to publicise the fact that nobody knew that? And everyone was
when you say that bit, are you filming it there?
No, the overlap where they were doing a podcast, they do a podcast that Gary Neville does, with, which is it's really successful now. And Amir was the guest, so I just wanted to grab that bit of film and put it out on LinkedIn or whatever, just so people knew that he wasn't a coward or wasn't whatever. And it got anyway, on the way back, I rang Paul Smith. I said, is this normal in your business that something like that can happen where so much is at stake, but every rule's gone out the window, and the people who are supposed to be the responsible ones, like the border control, are behaving like? And he said, it's not, you don't know the half of it. Anyway, cut a long story short, we set up what's called the Global Fighters Union, and what it's going to do is if you imagine that footballers get a percentage of the broadcast fees through the PFA, musicians get it through the PRS, or songwriters do, but fighters don't get anything like that. So what we're doing is coming and going, right, we're going to, like Natasha Jonas is a client of ours who, one of our board he's a surgeon who runs the World Karate Association. He's worked with Natasha, and the list of things, the changes that are going to happen in gyms as a result of this union being formed, like pensions, life insurance that just no fighters get. You know, so that's we announced it in January, and instantly it got global attention. And everybody's getting excited about it. So that's an example of something that's come about just through doing what we do, managing, going, okay, well, we can do that because we can just introduce this team. Our job's about building a team.
You have the connections with them anyway, don't you, in a commercial way? And
team building it is.
That sounds brilliant.
Exciting, still getting excited by it.
It does sound exciting news, doesn't it? I'll watch this space then, as they say.
Absolutely.
Mon, that was fascinating. It really gives a good insight to what you do with Bold Management and the directions you're taking it in different areas as well.
Mate.
I wish you all the very best with it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for your time.
All right, cheers.